Agile methodologies emerged in the early 2000s as a direct response to more traditional development methodologies. Agile methodologies are really all about tightening the feedback loop between the development team and customers, enabling developers to be more flexible and achieve higher development velocity. So one of the core documents that really emerged as a part of the Agile methodology revolution is known as the Agile Manifesto. The Agile Manifesto has 12 key tenets, but I think 4 of them really illustrate the intent of the document, so let's talk about them right now. So the first is to favor individual interactions over processes and tools. Right? This is really about valuing the stakeholders who are involved in the software development process. The next is favoring working software over extensive documentation. So in Agile approaches, one common theme we'll see is that the software should always be buildable and executable. Next, we want to favor customer interactions over contract negotiations. And this is really all about bringing the customer into the development team so that we can receive feedback from them and respond to it quickly and effectively. And finally, we want to favor agility over planning. Right? What this is really about is about being flexible to the kinds of feedback that those customers are giving you and responding by building a product that more accurately reflects their needs and wishes. These principles were really developed to increase customer accountability within the development team. By bringing them in and getting them involved in the development process, we're able to both respond to their needs, but also keep them really carefully apprised of what's going on as the product is being developed. The other great thing about Agile methodologies is they increase development velocity by decreasing the amount of time that development teams spend building the wrong thing. And the reason we avoid building the wrong thing is, again, by having the customers in the loop and giving us feedback along the way. This also allows the development teams to experiment more by trying different design alternatives and figuring out which ones work best for the customer. So it gives the developers a little bit more flexibility to try different things out and see how they work in practice. Extreme programming, or XP, was one of the first really influential Agile development methodologies. At its core, extreme programming was all about having a buildable system at all times. So the development team would start really small and slowly grow their system over time in response to customer feedback. And this is in contrast to more traditional approaches where we started up front with a huge planning effort at the beginning and built our systems from the top down. So in XP, we really are starting at the bottom and building our systems up from the bottom up. Systems that are built with XP follow 5 key principles. So the first is communication. When we think about communication, what we want to do is we want to encourage the various stakeholders to talk to each other essentially at all times. We want to make it so that the developers can get feedback from the customers as quickly as possible, and the customers also have access to the development team. Next, XP-based projects often favor the simplest solution that's possible. So rather than over-engineering large, complicated solutions, what we want to do is we want to build a simple solution, try it with the customers and see if it works. Because if it does, that's great. It's good enough, and we can move forward onto other development tasks. The next is feedback. So in the feedback phase, what we want to do is we want to encourage the customers and the developers to talk to each other. The expectation here, of course, is that once the development team receives feedback from the customer, they will try to act on it, but also that the development team can push back on the customer and let them know when their feedback isn't going to work or is going to be really overwhelming or expensive. Right? So this feedback works both ways, both from the customer to the developer, but also from the development team back to the customers. Next, we have courage, which seems like an odd principle to have for development methodology, but what courage is all about is empowering the development team to try out different experiments. We want them to try these different experiments so that we can get feedback on the experiments with the customer to see if they make the product better. If they don't, we can throw them away. But we don't view these as a sunk cost. We view these as an opportunity to learn about the system to make it better. And finally, we have respect, which is all about respecting all stakeholders' opinions and their time. The most obvious way that this gets codified within XP is this moniker, "Don't break the build." So when developers commit code to the repository, there's an expectation that the code that they've committed always works, that it doesn't break the build, so that the rest of the development team isn't slowed down. This again goes back to one of the core founding ideas of XP, which is about always having a buildable system. So XP-based projects all follow these 5 key principles and keep them in mind for all of the development decisions that they encounter along the way.